Hello, dear learners. Welcome to exploring an understanding of how research supports yoga for mental health. Let's set forth on a journey of exploration, gently weaving the threads of research into the fabric of our own knowledge and skills. So, whether you're a therapist, a teacher, or simply a seeker of knowledge, I invite you to embrace these moments with a sense of gentle curiosity and openness. I'm your host, Judy Thompson, and in today's segment, we will be exploring the publication Emotion Regulation and Heart Rate Variability May Identify the Optimal Posttraumatic Stress Disorder Treatment, Analyses from a Randomized Controlled Trial, published February 2024 in the journal Frontiers in Psychiatry, authored by Danielle C. Mathersul, Jamie M. Zeitzer, R.J. Schultz-Heike, Timothy J. Avery, and Peter J. Bailey. In this episode, we'll examine research comparing yoga-based practices with standard therapeutic methods for treating PTSD. The study shows how physical and emotional indicators can help determine which treatment will be most effective for each person. The research is significant because it measures specific biological markers and emotion regulation patterns that could transform mental health treatment approaches. These predictive factors may help clinicians connect patients with treatment options that are individually aligned to more effective treatment outcomes. Both traditional cognitive therapy and yoga-based approaches are being used to treat veterans with PTSD. The individual outcomes from these therapeutic methodologies are being utilized to develop an understanding of how more personalized mental health interventions can begin to be formulated. PTSD remains one of the hardest mental health conditions to effectively treat, as current proven therapies show inconsistent results. Research shows that while standard trauma therapies can work, between 30 to 50% of patients don't see significant improvement in their symptoms, and up to 60% stop treatment early, especially among veterans. This data highlights a critical need in mental health care, the ability to personalize treatment approaches from the start. Rather than using a one-size-fits-all method, researchers have begun exploring and developing innovative ways to match individuals with the treatments most likely to help them, based on their unique characteristics, circumstances, and clinical presentation. Traditional approaches like cognitive processing therapy has long been considered the standard for PTSD treatment. However, varying effectiveness from traditional therapies has instigated the exploration of integrative and complementary approaches, and it is here that yoga is emerging as a particularly strong and important option. Unlike traditional talk therapies, yoga offers a body-based approach that combines physical postures, breathing techniques, and meditation, potentially providing multiple pathways to healing trauma stored in both mind and body. What makes the current research particularly significant is its focus on identifying specific markers, both psychological and physiological, that might predict which individuals are more likely to respond to traditional therapy versus yoga-based interventions. This approach represents a crucial step toward more personalized treatment planning, potentially reducing the time and emotional cost of trying treatments that may not be optimal for a particular individual. By examining factors like emotion regulation abilities and heart rate variability, researchers are beginning to uncover objective measures that could guide treatment selection and ultimately help improve outcomes for individuals working with PTSD symptoms. In the study we are examining, the methodology compared two approaches to treating PTSD. This research itself involved 85 U.S. veterans with clinically significant PTSD symptoms who were randomly assigned to receive either cognitive processing therapy, known as CPT, or specialized yoga-based practices. The study design utilized a randomized controlled trial format. This means the researchers weren't just looking to see if one treatment was better than the other, but whether the yoga-based intervention could perform at least as well as the established therapy. Over a 6-week period, participants in the cognitive processing therapy group received individual therapy sessions twice weekly. These sessions followed standardized protocols for cognitive processing therapy, including homework assignments between sessions. The yoga-based practices group began with an intensive 5-day workshop, followed by 10 twice-weekly group sessions, all incorporating specific yoga breathing and meditative practices. The research team collected multiple types of data, including clinician-administered assessments, self-reported symptoms, and physiological measurements. They tracked these measures not just during the treatment period, but also at 1 month and 1 year after treatment completion, providing important information about the long-term effectiveness of both approaches. The researchers paid special attention to 2 key markers: emotion regulation, measured through standardized self-report questionnaires, and heart rate variability, captured during sleep using specialized monitoring equipment. These measurements were taken before treatment began to establish baseline levels, allowing the team to investigate whether these initial readings could predict which treatment would work better for different individuals. This methodology represents an important advancement in PTSD research, moving beyond simply asking whether a treatment works to examining who it works for and why. Detailed analysis like this helps in providing a foundation for the development of more personalized treatment approaches. In assessing how participants regulated their emotions, the researchers utilized a dual approach, combining both subjective self-reporting and objective physiological measurements. The primary self-reporting tool used was the Difficulties in Emotion Regulation Scale, which consists of 36 questions. This scale measures several aspects of emotional regulation, including how well participants understand their emotions, their ability to accept emotional experiences, and their capacity to manage emotional responses effectively. Participants rated their experiences on a 5-point scale, with higher scores indicating greater difficulties in emotional regulation. The physiological measurements centered on heart rate variability, or HRV, which serves as a reliable biological marker of emotional regulation. HRV measures the variation in time between consecutive heartbeats and provides insight into the autonomic nervous system's functioning. The research team collected this data using monitors worn on the chest, which recorded continuous measurements over 24-hour periods. They then extracted 5-minute segments of clean, artifact-free data, analyzing various aspects of heart rate variability, including both time domain and frequency domain measurements. These complementary approaches to measuring emotional regulation, self-reporting, and physiological monitoring allowed the researchers to capture both the subjective experience of managing emotions and the body's unconscious regulatory processes. This dual perspective was important in understanding how different individuals might respond to either cognitive processing therapy or the yoga-based intervention. This assessment strategy is valuable because it can be practically applied in clinical settings. Despite using advanced technology for physiological measurements in the study, the methods utilized can be adapted for overall treatment planning. This research explored how baseline emotional awareness impacts treatment outcomes. A clear pattern emerged. Veterans who initially struggled to recognize and understand their emotions showed greater improvements in PTSD symptoms. This held true for both cognitive processing therapy and the yoga-based intervention across both short-term and long-term follow-ups. Even a year later, those with lower emotional awareness at the start maintained their treatment gains, while those with higher initial awareness showed less dramatic improvements. When examining emotional response patterns, interesting information emerged. Veterans who initially struggled with emotional non-acceptance showed better outcomes with cognitive processing therapy than with the yoga-based approach. This suggests that those who have difficulty accepting their emotions may benefit more from structured, cognitive-focused therapy. However, the self-reported measures only revealed part of the picture. While emotional awareness and acceptance were insightful, they were less effective in predicting treatment success than physiological measurements. This information emphasizes the complexity of emotional regulation, as well as the need to consider both subjective experiences and objective biological markers in treatment evaluation. These findings challenge the assumption that higher emotional awareness leads to better treatment outcomes. Instead, those who struggle most with emotional awareness may benefit the most from therapy, regardless of the approach. The most striking discovery came from heart rate variability, HRV measurements, which were stronger predictors of treatment success than self-reported emotional measures. it seems that all key HRV measurements outperformed emotional regulation scales in predicting outcomes. Notably, veterans with lower HRV indicating weaker autonomic regulation responded significantly better to the yoga-based intervention, showing greater PTSD symptom improvement compared to cognitive processing therapy. Conversely, veterans who started with higher or average to high baseline HRV measurements responded more favorably to cognitive processing therapy. Their symptom improvement was better aligned with the traditional therapeutic approach compared to the yoga intervention. This pattern was consistent across multiple HRV measurements, including SDNN, standard deviation of NN intervals, which reflects overall heart rate variability, RMSSD, root, mean square of successive differences, an indicator of short-term heart rate fluctuations linked to parasympathetic activity, and high-frequency HRV, which measures vagal tone and autonomic regulation. Most importantly, these relationships remained stable over the entire one-year follow-up period. The predictive power of HRV stayed strong over time, highlighting its value as a long-term indicator of treatment compatibility. Among all the HRV measurements studied, high-frequency HRV, an indicator of vagal tone and parasympathetic nervous system activity, emerged as the strongest predictor overall. This measurement reliably indicated whether an individual would respond better to a yoga-based intervention or cognitive processing therapy. Such a clear link between a physiological marker and treatment response represents a major step toward personalizing PTSD treatment. These findings suggest that a simple physiological measurement taken before treatment could help clinicians choose the most effective intervention for each person. This supports a more personalized approach to mental health treatment, moving away from one-size-fits-all methods. For clinicians working with veterans or other individuals with PTSD, this research suggests an interesting framework. Clients presenting with lower baseline HRV measurements, which is often associated with higher stress levels and greater difficulty recovering from physiological and psychological challenges, could be directed toward yoga-based interventions, while those with higher HRV readings, generally associated with lower stress levels, greater resilience to psychological challenges, and better coping mechanisms, might be better served by cognitive processing therapy. This targeted approach could help improve treatment outcomes while potentially reducing the time and resources spent on less effective interventions. These findings suggest that treatment facilities might benefit from maintaining both traditional therapeutic services and yoga-based programs, allowing them to match patients with the most appropriate intervention based on their physiological profiles. The long-term consistency of these findings is particularly valuable from a clinical perspective. The fact that HRV remained a reliable predictor of treatment success over a full year suggests that this approach could help improve not just immediate outcomes, but sustained recovery as well. This could lead to more efficient resource allocation and potentially reduce the need for multiple treatment attempts. Looking at the broader implications, this research opens the door for similar physiological markers to be identified and utilized in treating other mental health conditions. It represents a significant step toward more precise, personalized mental health care, where treatment decisions are guided by objective biological indicators. While this research is a major step toward personalizing PTSD treatment, there are some limitations to consider. A key limitation involved heart rate variability data that in some cases was absent due to technical issues and poor data quality. Future research should improve data collection and extend assessment periods for more reliable results. Since the study focused on veterans with PTSD, assessing a more well-rounded and diverse group of individuals with different types of trauma would create more equitable data. Additionally, studying HRV changes during treatment could reveal how improvements occur and help identify early signs of success or failure. This would allow for real-time treatment adjustments based on physiological responses rather than just baseline data. Another consideration for future research would be to examine additional physiological markers beyond heart rate variability. While HRV proved to be a strong predictor, Other biological indicators like neurotransmitter levels, heart rate and blood pressure variability, inflammatory markers, or even functional MRI data might provide complementary information to further refine treatment selection. Future research could expand to consider additional types of traditional clinical therapy and yoga-based practice, as well as include other evidence-based therapeutic approaches to create a more comprehensive treatment matching system. Longitudinal studies extending beyond the 1-year follow-up period would be valuable in understanding the long-term stability of these treatment effects and whether initial physiological markers continue to predict outcomes over extended periods. As we conclude this episode, let's recap. The research from this study revealed that heart rate variability can serve as an important predictor of mental health treatment, potentially offering a biological way to match clients with their optimal treatment path. The research demonstrated that veterans with lower baseline heart rate variability showed better improvement with yoga-based interventions, while those with higher HRV responded more favorably to cognitive processing therapy. This finding represents a significant step toward personalizing mental health treatment using objective biological markers. Equally important was the discovery that emotional awareness levels can predict overall treatment success, regardless of the chosen intervention. This suggests that understanding a patient's emotional regulation capabilities could help set realistic treatment expectations and guide therapeutic approaches. These findings open new possibilities for using physiological markers to guide treatment decisions across various mental health conditions, potentially improving success rates and reducing the time clients spend trying ineffective treatments. Thank you to the authors and publisher for all of the research within this important study. Emotion regulation and heart rate variability may identify the optimal post-traumatic stress disorder treatment, analyses from a randomized controlled trial, for those eager to continue exploring, or for anyone seeking more in-depth information. Additional resources and supplementary materials can be accessed within the links provided in the episode description. As we end our time together, remember to embrace and witness the beauty of life, and within shared experience, be the thread that creates compassion and curiosity for others. Thank you for joining me on this journey in learning how research supports yoga and integrative practices for mental health and well-being. May you find and share beauty and peace on your journey toward wellness.